boss lady said it's time to start. So last spring I was walking on Prince Street on a Saturday, which is a really terrible idea, but so my head was down and I'm walking it out and I pass a wall of heat-pasted turquoise posters, all with the simple written question, what would Lynne Tillman do? And I thought, wow, this is like a dream when the person you think should answer this question is actually going to get to answer the question. I moved back to New York City in 1992 and became a part of this community at the church. And my friends were kind enough to suggest a lot of books and help me get the education that I really needed. Among them were Lynne's books. I quickly read Motion Sickness and Cast in Doubt, and then a little later, No Lease on Life. And I saw Lynne around town and at the church and was pretty shy, so I didn't introduce myself. But I paid a lot of attention and enjoyed her both as a reader and a writer. She seemed so specifically contemporary, self-possessed and grown up and lively and enthusiastic and playful, and basically the real deal. Later, I moved to Santa Fe where I worked at a new contemporary art space, and the first artist I met there was the late sculptor, Juan Munoz. He had come into the building early and was visibly disappointed to find me, a glorified intern, his welcoming committee. I tried to make some small talk saying I was from New York, and suddenly he asked if I knew Lynne Tillman. When I shook my head, yes, he was visibly relieved. He figured that anyone who spoke Lynne Tillman was probably not a total waste of time. For both Juan and I, Lynne was a shorthand for many things. For the writing you believed in, the art you were excited by, your sense of humor, your sense of justice, and generally, your sensibleness. I recognize Lynne's consistent wit and humor in her recent collection, Someday This Will Be Funny, but I find a new depth in the writing, like she has developed a technology for ordering perception into a shifted point of view, a new perspective of sort of systematic abstraction, comprehensible for quite specific sense of space and place. I've seen New York in Lynne's work and do again in these stories, but this time, though, not as a burger joint or a section of the East Village, but more generally as an index for spatial values that stretch to an imaginary infinity, the internal New York, the deep grid that it places in us. In her story, Chartreuse, a man describes his wife's blouse, yellow, elided with green, never landing on the integrity of one color. In these stories, distances between things may be understood through lines that recede to a central vanishing point. The yellow and the green approach each other, but not quite. Chartreuse ends with the husband observing, they loved and denied each other simultaneously, and more laughed at themselves. The author is true to the promise of her title. She has changed as a writer, New York has changed as a city, and with age and change we lose things, but there is an earned comfort. Now we can laugh at ourselves. Lynne's work is a kind of touchstone in my writing life, and I now know why. She says, almost as incantation, that writing matters, and I believe her. She has cred, street as well as otherwise. From the final story of the collection, I don't believe any response like invention is sad. The world is made up of imagining. I imagine this too. Things circle, all is flutter. Things fall down and rise up. Hope and remorse, beauty and viciousness, and imagination wherever it doggedly hides, unveil petulant realities. I live in my mind and I don't. And then she ends with, out of nothing comes language, and out of language comes everything. I know there will be stories. Certainly, there will be stories. Please welcome Lynne Tillman back to the Poetry Project.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful. I'm going to read two stories. quite different from each other. And one was written, I was asked to write a science fiction story. And I've never written a science fiction story. In fact, I don't think I've really read science fiction, with the exception of a couple of things, or Kafka, which is... and the first thing I thought about is if you're writing in the future, then you have to be developing a different language, because if you think about the 18th century or 19th century, 20th century, we're using, going back, of course, different language. So it took me much longer to write than I thought. This was just going to be a lark, writing science fiction. A month later, I was still working on it. So this is called Future Prosthetic at Question Mark. And it may be a little hard for me to read this because I've made up language. Factoid Storyville, or dead time storage, sways not heavy in EO's activated life or such iteration, cause me, EO, switch off on, extending hardship to fail never. What got nomened memory or history in antique days, not longed for. But EO's temp screeny, chrono oldie, embedded with an ever-same implant, loads inward screens to dwell upon and splain past eras, especially memory land of the other era, toe. EO can. Toe human sapiens marred by attitudinal distress that dehinged being, near deactivating future us. Toe held to a long log vibe of humanity, detailed by values blah blah, antique species meism, and how tote flowed just to human sapiens, which did cause multi-depth mental diseases and bound the species to body geneticides. In EO's mumbly, chrono oldly, labeled in philo backwardness, cause he she, entered retinal screen, reps this temp screening, in the post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear, pre-tote screen age. Pan Alley, our venerable, flashed thusly of past that, but the dates aren't confirmed cause of casual blubber from dead timers of toe. Those simple mindies groveled memorials and self-spinning claimers of such to explain events in their cairns. That just renegates EO's system. Chrono oldie drolls factoidally on shared connubial tote retinals audio screen, Ray Antique Storyville. EO press in pad too wide attention. Chrono oldie scripts thusly. There was nature mammoth fear of extinction, nuclear threat missiles, filthy snail mail, global microbe carriers, fevered physical war, animal vengeance, and blame fright speeching. Chrono oldie forbear, a was-he neg signal. Grave terroristic chance of tote annihilation sapped human sapiens by early 21st or pre-then. In physical war period, there falls further stunting, despair of water loss, tote grid swine mongers and waste spinners, beast, sun, and wind mania, and what called patriot nations and faith-mad systems. Our far-gone ancient ancestors held to multi-forms of extinction angst that also conquered organ systems. EO incred. Why'd they drive that extinction line at question mark? EO's active-passive program iterates aliveness, activation cures, plus true-form pan protheses. EO can such. Screeny drolled of ancestors with known signifying knowledge of such like. Dumbly human sapiens, but Screeny, a philo-antique she-him, dwells in mementos of born-again entry places in life-death syndrome. He-she did too much droll to EO of such, plus ever uncertainties of ray bad birth bandwidths, plus anon blurs of sweet-tooth motherboards, too biddy nostalgiac for EO. EO memories chrono holding. Our zero implants crash dark hole humanist newbies. Me, us who do arrive in the Neo event cyclotron, switch out neon ozone surrounds, duly implant retinal screens with restart, minus angst attachments. Chrono-oldie, this gene type favors all activities reveling in such called not let go, the atavist feature that weighs down heavy with remnant ships. Eo lulls, awaiting pressback, though blooming in else places. Suddenish tempts Greenie clamorous. Luminites flare starry. He-shape palpate soft pad that bounces to soul historico doc file Eo Fuli access. Eo holds mini volta for dead time storage. Screeny tosses canubial eye screen into space-time slow-mo. Eo trace chrono-oldie at risk of incontinence. In Nomen, early 21st century, humans, neo-human sapiens, grew weary, sad, and torn. Wars aren't exciting. None of them, though, could stop burning, so ultimo objects warred. Whackers, the 22nd iteration Robo-Sapiens, altered screen info. Thusly, wars held in safe mode. No one died warlike. Whoa, no external exits? Add question mark? No end death, and such deemed Kragos-like, cause advancing human sapiens nor overkilled. Humans no more hands-on battlers, just hard-pressing, round-bottomed nerd types, so it was said. Pre-consternation time arrived, with major slice of human sapiens extended in a dumb cloud of no reproach. In their tempest fugit, they did pledge and ascribe to tribes, brands, designer stores, and other spiritual cults. Human sapiens dug terra firma and believing systems. Whackers, robo-sapiens, performed war, and screens are shifted in nanoseconds. Thusly, their disintegrated systems arrived. They narn ken well one suit store or club from another, such was their toad confusion. A whacker blearied one side camp or party slice on screen, another undid such sink-like, and toad camps and slices of which were multitudes, did and redid with neo-strategic diabolics. Plain out no camp new winning slice. Old Nomen victory just post-jigging effects. Such also deemed advance-like by ultra-ists on all screens. No winning slice, yay, but it worsened. Eo flaring queries. How so, at question mark. Human sapiens not hold one thought bubble. Mind bob 42/7 on toad screens, internal, external, organ brains got ever redecorated in unheimlich patterns. Plain out no one kenned where he, she living. No fizz-line boundaries. Winning, losing transactions through bank screens, designer stores, national clubs. Signification burnout. Antique humans are born irrevocable, confused mindsets. Thus said, in tone, by their species, I can't think straight. Eo implanted with some such of that info in neo-nomen, eo-symbol thinking, but not exactly. Eomorphs, colors, plus momentums, being, seeing, blasting this, that, to temp screenies. Eo screen eyes, plus 2020, visuals tote modalities, performing Venn-like understandings, tracking pan-venerable. Chrono-oldie wanes, recharges. Near fin time of toe, human beings turned consternated, mind-fucked. That was the conundrum. Whoa, a tote, I can't say, Eo can't say in this. Pre-tote organ brain prostheses, at question mark? Human sapiens malfunction pre our time in pot. Chrono-oldie mooding, cause holding inward like what once emoticon said, but not an actual emoticon said, a referral to sad emoticon from that not let go feature on retinal retainer. Suddenish chrono-oldie retos Eo with apostrophizes. He shade rolls that it info twill be impassable for Eo's internal activation. Whoa, trial on at exclamation point. Simul, amid descent of mental breakdown wars, human sapiens reveled in such like animal humans or domestics, known dogs, cats, all four-legged fur-ridden beings. The most unwiring to such humans arrived by such animal humans. These domestics carried otherness, nulling human sapien code scripts. Eo flashing darkly. Neo-info, ranking plus ancient, ever screen landed. Domestics external, with ancient ancients for all of toe. Human sapiens formed domestics of four-legged wild beings, sandlands, junglies and caves, and truly loved nomed domestics. Nart internal love, nart into funking a doodle. Thus that troubling biz, ever unscrews being, significo eo holds no fixities. Such was human thought. Domestics loved unconditional life, dogs specially loved, cats forebode slavitude. There arrived dog lovers and cat lovers. Drolling me at question mark? Nart at exclamation mark. Cats did what called meowing, dogs barking. Humans delighted of such speed. But unknown, a cat's meow was ironical. Ironic humorous vibrato. Dogs are barking, brutal, cruel talk. Deadpan drolling, eo at question mark? Nart at exclamation point. Cats ironical. Thusly, domestics did walk out on two legs. It came that humans weight-lifted pain angst. Organ hearts broke down, pre-toed prosthetics. Brain systems already in breakdown of sync mind fucking, and followed post-domestics, laughter ended. Whoa, whoa, at exclamation point. Entry to the serious period, at question mark. In consternated time, no abiding laughter. Eo weighing heavy in neo-info mode. Laughter, at question mark, from jokes. This sounds sickish to Eo. Whoa, jokes, at question mark, extincto. Extincto with toe, at question mark. Chrono oldie flashes wookie wooks, and temp screening darkening, plus fixing at momentum. Eo modes changeable like. Hereby, toad, Eo reviles, future minting of past dwelling, heavy remnant chip, death, no antique sorties, plus no backward gazing to the micro-driven, consternating time, cause toe extincto over out. I have no idea what that is. It certainly is interesting writing, and now I'm going to read something that's in English. But of course that's a mix of a lot of old English. You know, to think about the future, you think about the past and how language is kind of morphs in different ways. Okay, this is my other story. It's called Down This Life. It was Ramadan, the holiest time for Muslims. Oh, by the way, both of these stories are as yet unpublished, but promised to be published. Down This Life. It was Ramadan, the holiest time for Muslims. The American arrived in Istanbul and went straight to the pudding shop, which was on a diagonal from the Blue Mosque. Pretty quickly, she found out where not to eat and which hotels were cheap but decent. One of the few Turks who hung out at the pudding shop, Cengiz, was a poet and chicken farmer. He'd been in jail for poems that were considered dangerous to the state, and he helped her find a room. Roger and Tony, inexperienced English dealers, had the room next door. Tony was part Portuguese, a nervous guy. Roger came from the north, he was phlegmatic. Roger tempered Tony's Latin blood, they like to say. The Turks were fasting, but she was eating more and more. Roger and Tony had a big chunk of Afghani that made her hungry in the middle of the night. Tony, Roger, and the American girl were frequently the only Westerners, with just a few dissident Turks, in a late-night locanda. The man was eating chicken, waving a leg in the air, making a point, laughing, bits of the bird flying around his head. The three started laughing with him. Everyone started laughing, but Tony looked around worried. He thought they would know they were stoned and report them, so they left. Tony and Roger were intent on making money dealing, though they weren't suited for the job. She would sit with them in their small, unheated hotel room, discussing what to do and how to do it. The men wanted to go south to find a contact. The three passed hour after hour, getting high, talking, night after night. It was very late and quiet. Several cars rode down the street, their headlights strobed across their windows. "Get down," Tony said. "Police." "Tony," Roger said without energy, "we're 2 flights up." Get down," Tony insisted. They dropped to the floor and lay there for a while nothing happened, and nothing continued to happen. She told them they could go south without her, that she would catch up with them later. Cengiz invited some pudding shop regulars to his apartment, which wasn't far from his chicken farm. He lived in the old city. Cengiz served them the chicken he raised. He talked about his chicken with the reverence he reserved for women, hashish, and the Bosphorus, the river that divides Istanbul and east from west. Cengiz had large farmer hands and a solid body and whispered late at night. He told stories while he smoked, inventing English, squinting as if the sun was shining. He was always in love with the wrong women, married women. "Cops and robbers," the American girl said. Cengiz blew the smoke out thoughtfully. "It is true," he said. Cengiz insisted on showing them the way home. He knew Istanbul better and escorted her and the other foreigners to the street. A gang of men, young and old, jumped out and started hitting him, punching him hard. "Run," Cengiz yelled, "run." They stood there. "Run," he shouted. When he appeared again at the pudding shop, he didn't mention it, so she didn't either. Istanbul was the center of the universe, with an endless line of people going east, west, and back. An Englishman called Billy in import-export invited her to a locanda he knew outside the Blue Mosque district. They were the only Westerners. Until the gypsies came in, she was the only female. They appeared to be a family, mother, daughter, and son or husband. The daughter danced for money, a tiny beauty with stormy eyes like the November weather. She asked the American to dance with her. In clubs in Istanbul, when a man liked the way you danced, or you, he spit on money and pressed it to your forehead. That had happened to her once. Dancing with the gypsy, the girl imagined being part of a harem. She sat down with Billy, the gypsy family left, and a stranger threw his keys at her. Billy said, "I think we should go." But before they did, 2 other men approached their table. One said, "Don't bother with these men. They're bad people. Please let us show you the hospitality of our country. I have a restaurant. May I invite you there?" The girl was charmed and looked at Billy. He nodded okay, but as they rose, he whispered, "When I say run, run," and the 2 got into the car. One of the men was the chauffeur, the other the boss and restaurant owner. The boss's mistress was waiting for them in his restaurant. No one else was there. She was a girl of 14 or 15. After being introduced to the American girl, the Turkish girl grabbed the American's bag and emptied it, looking for makeup. She used whatever she found and painted her face at another table. They drank Turkish coffee, watching her. The boss said, "Now we will take you to your hotel." "Which is it?" Billy told him they were staying in different hotels. They left the young mistress all made up in the locanda. Billy and she sat in the back again, chauffeur and boss in front. The boss kept asking about their hotel. They kept repeating they stayed in different hotels. The drive was longer and longer. The driver was taking a circuitous route along the highway beside Cengiz's beloved Bosphorus. Billy held her hand. The car stopped suddenly on the deserted highway. The boss jumped out and opened the door next to Billy. Billy got out. The boss tried to shut the door behind him, but Billy protested and kept the door open while she edged out fast through the opening. She stood behind Billy. "Now," he said, "run." She started to run, looking back. The boss had pulled out a knife. She stopped. "Run," Billy yelled again. She ran, and he started running. The men chased them, but stopped, gave up, and walked back to the car. Billy and she kept running. He shouted, "I knew they wanted you or me." The sight of 2 Westerners running along the highway excited the passengers in a group taxi, and the car slowed down. Billy shouted, "Bad men, bad men." The passengers nodded and took them back to Istanbul. Billy left the next day to do business in the East. The next few days she kept to herself. She had been told to run too often. The pudding shop was steamy and warm. Cengiz and she drank Turkish tea, very sugared, from small curvaceous glasses. He told her that all the Turks she had been meeting were bad, and that most Turks were bad. She protested. He said the ones who hung out in the Blue Mosque district might be hash smokers or they might be criminals. He dragged hard on his cigarette and sipped his tea. When Turks smoke, he said, they either go mad or become beautiful. They walked to the Bosphorus on a clear blue day in December. He said, I think you should marry me and stay in Istanbul. You're young and this life isn't good for you. It was cold. When they spoke, their words formed clouds. She said, I don't think I can, and pictured herself living in Istanbul, married to Cengiz, poet and chicken farmer, drinking tea, eating chicken, smoking hash. She would see every Italian Western ever made, the ones that didn't go to the States. His name was Johnny, sequel to John Il Bastardo, shot entirely in slow motion, all in flashback, while Johnny lay dying. Her life in Istanbul was flashing back and forth timelessly. The dervishes were whirling in the south and she wanted to change. Just a week, she told Cengiz. She caught a ride in a van with 5 Germans. One of the men taught German literature at the college she attended before she dropped out. The van was Red-Headed Freddy's. He owned a boutique in Dusseldorf. They stopped first in a small city that was having a carnival. They'd been sleeping in the van for a couple of days, pissing by the side of the road, but they were mobbed like rock stars when they got out of the van. Then they were driven in a horse-drawn carriage around town to a large, shapeless tent. The belly dancer was heavy, sloppy, and her stained blouse fell off her shoulders. In ecstasy, she threw her head back, her long, dark hair limp with sweat. She thrust her fat belly out, and the rolls moved up and down crazily with the music. The woman was sexy in a way the girl had never seen before. The carriage driver guided them to a hotel. He indicated with a sly smile that it was all right. Tony and Roger walked out as they drifted in. This is a dream, she told the English dealers. They nodded, turned around, and followed them to their rooms. There was a knock at the door. A waiter stood in the hallway holding a tray of tea no one had ordered. They thanked him and took it. Several minutes later, another knock, the same waiter. He whispered, hashish. Roger and Tony nodded. The waiter offered them his Turkish. Freddie brought out his Afghani. The waiter smoked, and his eyes grew bigger and glowed. Soon he closed them and murmured, hashish, hashish, hashish. In his mouth, the word was the name of God. Farther south, the countryside was wilder. Freddie insisted they might be in real danger, so when they made camp in a forest, he melted their hash in a pan over a small fire in a mixture of sugar and water. The hash crystallized into something like rock candy, and no one could get high sucking on it. She and the college teacher took a walk along the highway, leaving the others in the forest, sitting around the meager fire. They walked and walked, seeing no one, hearing the wind blowing harshly against the trees and boulders. A cafe appeared, like a mirage, but nearing it, they saw it was just a shack. They were close to a town. Within minutes, a cop rode up, leaped out of his car, and demanded their passports, but the passports were in the forest. They couldn't explain anything in Turkish, and he didn't know English or German. He was about to take them in, motioning to the girl to get into his car, but she backed away. She wasn't getting into a stranger's car. Then a man, a civilian, drove by, saw the scene, pulled over, and translated for them. He knew some German, and they were let go. They thanked the man, he drove off, and they rushed back to the forest. Freddie had them on the road to Istanbul in an hour. It was Christmas Day, they discovered, when he turned on the radio. The pudding shop felt the same to her, even the new faces. Cengiz and she traded stories. The Westerner, Abraham, who lived in an ancient VW van and was about 70, had deceived Cengiz again. It's time for you to go back, Cengiz said. Yesterday, 2 Westerners, an Englishman and an American woman like you, got taken in for questioning by the police. The man was wanted by Interpol. They had come by car and the cops had the license plate. The woman got scared in the station. She pulled out a gun and killed 4 police. 4. Then they ran away to a locanda not far from the station, not far from here. The pudding shop? Yes, here. Cops found them, of course, and killed the man. They captured the woman. Jenga showed her a newspaper headline with American in very big type. They hate Americans now. The Turks are very angry. It's a bad time for you to be here. A cop car pulled up outside the pudding shop, and a woman was pushed out onto the sidewalk. Cameras and TV crews surrounded her and the detectives. She looked frantic, and the girl tried to catch her eye but couldn't. "Let me know where you are and I'll write you," Jenga said. "I'll think of you when I drink tea and when I smoke by the Bosphorus." Jenga wrote the girl for a while, many poetic, handwritten letters on onion skin. Then he stopped writing her. She would never marry him now. Thank you.